We should have known ourselves. You're getting your exercise in this morning.
One person in 2 rooms.
This is my elder.
Oh.
If you want to go to the asylum. Coming into this one? I've been in this one, I know. The border trip asylum seekers.
There were 3 of us.
This is good.
There's one upstairs too.
There's 2 up there. This is from our table. I didn't want to get anything else for
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Do you want to come up here? There's more room. Here, hold on. You turn on the lights for now. To get set.
I just want to walk through.
I would want to be here.
Okay, do you want me to, are we ready to start, you think? It's kind of noisy in this room, but I'll try to get them to calm down. Okay.
You're worried about travel photos.
Okay.
He's going to give me a look if you want me to go forward.
Good morning, and thanks everyone for coming to look at our travel journal, as Rob says. We want to welcome everyone, and before we get into a brief history, and it's going to be very brief on the border trip experience, we wish to thank everyone in the Loretto community for praying us on these journeys and being so generous with your contributions of socks and shoestrings and all sorts of other things over the years. Really appreciate knowing that the team back home is with us. So let me start with a brief history. Loretto's journey to the border trip began about 11 years ago when Sister Alicia Ramirez walked the migrant trail from Sasabe, Mexico to Tucson, Arizona. That's a distance of 75 long, hard miles. After that life-changing experience, she wanted to have the experience for everyone on the Latin America Committee. And at the time, Barb Mecker was the staff liaison person with the committee. So the two of them planned a 5-day experience that included a visit to El Paso and Juarez, and then 2 of the cities on the border in Arizona. The one city across from Douglas, Arizona is called Agua Prietas. And then the city across from Nogales, Arizona is Nogales, Mexico. And we met many wonderful people working for migrants and social justice on those trips. So the next year, after all of us had that experience of the overview of the border, Alicia organized another shorter trip, which seemed to work. We would be able to get people to go if it were just on a weekend. So we settled on being able to go to Nogales, Arizona, or Tucson, Arizona. In Nogales, we're actually able to walk across the border and meet with people who have been deported. So that's the important part of that trip. And after Alicia went off the LACC, we simply continued, and you know the rest of it. You've been supporting us for all these years. And so the workshop today, we intend to take you on the journey and let members of the LACC introduce you to these wonderful people and places.
That's me. Okay. Hello. That's Humane Borders, as you can see. When the migrants start across the desert, often they think it's going to be a short walk. They don't have any idea of what they're facing physically. The human body in that kind of a condition needs 3 gallons of water a day. And so you could imagine that that's not possible. So a group called Humane Borders has put, they have 80 water stations. And as they're walking across the desert, they might see one of these flags, blue flags on a 30-foot pole. And there are 80 of these scattered through the Sonora Desert down where we were. Okay. So they travel out, they have these big trucks. They have, anybody remember how many trucks they had?
2 or 3, because they're very expensive.
This is where the majority of the donations go, is to maintain the trucks. And they take off every morning at 6, and some for several hours and some for the whole day. And they go to these barrels that are stationed around the desert. Okay, there we go. You'll notice this particular one had the sign that's dedicated to a woman that's been given the Mary Rhodes Award by Loretto, which is kind of cool, yes. Okay, Humane Borders. So they have these 55-gallon industrial strength barrels that they fill, and they have a spigot on them. And they go around and they look at them, they look for contaminants, they actually do a chemical test to make sure it's clean, they taste it. And then, if they need to address that, then they get a different barrel and clean it. And they put that little sign of Our Lady Guadalupe on there because many of the migrants don't speak Spanish. And so that's, the universal sign for that part of the Americas. And so this was Joel that we met. He took us out, Joel Smith, who works for the organization for 25 hours a week and, works for like 50 hours a week is what he does. He gets paid for 25 hours a week. Just a gentle man. And here he is, sampling the water at Station 16. Now, Border Patrol knows about these, and they just kind of seem to, at least up till now, they seem to have let them alone, and so the locations are published. And you can see, what it looks like to cross the kind of desert that they have to cross. So this spot where he took us was an old bunkhouse that was abandoned. But what he was pointing out to us is there are these clothing there in the corner, and they're encouraged before they come they make a garment that goes over their garment out of camouflage, so that they're harder to be seen. And then they have these shoes made of carpet so they don't leave footprints. And then once they get, of course, we're on the U.S. side here, and so they've discarded those there. This was a site where remains are found in many, many areas. This was right on a road that we were on. And a group of artists have been creating memorials for some of the locations. Across the road from here was one that was to an infant that had been found. Her remains had been found, had little booties and on it. This map shows that, let me see the dates on here, if you can't read it, 1999 to 2016, and No More Deaths works with the county, Pima County. These are dots of remains that were found during that time. 3,087 that were found, and it's pretty much believed commonly that there are many, many that are never located. You know, the desert is so harsh between the climate and animals that the remains don't hold up. And that was, anybody want to add anything about Joel?
Just let me just add one thing. He's, as Rock said, very simple, kind man.
Oh, I like
And we asked him, "Why do you do this?" And he said, "I don't want anybody dying in my desert." It's a passionate, personal commitment for him.
So I'm going to talk about Operation Streamline. It's one of the first visits that we do on the border trip. Operation Streamline is a joint initiative of the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of Justice. And it was started in 2005, and it adopts a zero-tolerance approach to unauthorized border crossings by engaging in criminal prosecution of those that actually do the crossing of the border. It costs taxpayers about $20 million a year. As part of our visit, we go to the courthouse where the sentencing takes place. In Tucson, up to 70 people can appear in court at one time. They plead guilty and are sentenced in one mass court appearance, lasting about 1 hour or less. All of the defendants receive sentences of between 30 to 180 days in prison, some more depending if they have a prior arrest or about a crossing, or if they have a misdemeanor. Defendants are brought out in shackles, and you see that photo here. We're not allowed to take photos in the courtroom. But I must say, it is very impactful to see these people come out in their orange jumpsuits in chains, shackled and shuffling along. I mean, it's meant to dehumanize. They come out as if they've been, charged with multiple murders. And the personal belongings of Operation Streamline defendants, such as money, identification documents, are routinely confiscated by the Border Patrol upon arrest. So frequently these belongings are never returned, and migrants commonly find themselves deported and arrested after serving a prison sentence and stranded in a border city without any of these critical possessions. And in a later visit, I'll talk a little bit more about that. So we as Lorettos are present at the sentencing in solidarity with the defendants. We're there to bear witness to their sentencing, and we're there to bring some humanizing aspect to support them. And even though now we are not visible to the defendants, they instruct us to sit in the back of the courtroom in silence, no photographs. And so the defendants aren't able to see us. I understand from years back that people were seated on one side, and the defendants were able to see the Lorettos with their T-shirts and their buttons, and now that has changed. So our presence is to foster a sense of solidarity and humanizing of these people. So this is us outside the courtroom, waiting to be escorted in. Underneath the pictures of these judges that serve there. So that's...
70 people in 1 hour are sent through Operation Streamline. They just walk up and the judge says, and they have to have a lawyer right behind them. And sometimes they don't even have one. And someone will just fill in. And so and the judge says, are you guilty? Culpable means yes, I'm guilty. Okay, no more deaths. We heard, no more deaths. No more deaths. We heard a little bit about what happened at their camp. Their mission is to end suffering and death in the desert. And No More Deaths has been in existence for 13 years. And they have 2 camps in the desert. And one is near Arivaca. Arivaca is 7 miles from the border. And it is at the end of one of the long migrant trails that on our border trips where we walk. There are 3 stations and we carry water and food, blankets, whatever. This is the little office, and last December we took blankets, jeans, shoes, piles and truckloads of clothes, and we left at 9 on the border walk. We got back at 1. It's a 3-mile walk, and you'll see the terrain. By the time we got back, everything that we had brought was given out. The shoes, the winter months are harsh in the desert, and the summer months are awful. What they need are hats, shoes, and water. This is part of the desert, and you see the trail. It's not like a trail that we just kind of hike on. It is awful. In the rainy season, this is water, but it's part of their trail. And as we walked up, not all can do this walk. You have to be in very good condition.
But there's an alternative.
The alternative is to go with humane borders. Here is Lois Martin, 85-year-old volunteer for No More Deaths with the water. And with her is Mike Lear, co-member, went with us in April. And you see the jugs of water. These are empty, and at the stations, we put more water down. No More Deaths is very good about cleaning taking the jugs and getting them clean so they can be refilled. And these are the shrines of people who have left. We talked to people on our last trip, and in El Comedor that you'll hear about. And this one little girl said, we started out with 5, and 1 got sick, and I don't know where she is. Well, we know she could not go on. And so they wanted to tell somebody, but they got caught, and that was it. This is from our last trip. That's Marianne McGivern coming back down the trail, and that's Pearl and I don't know who's behind her.
Mary Louise.
Mary Louise.
Just my man. Oops.
Let me see. This is one of our favorite places, Southside Presbyterian Church. And many of you saw the signs a couple of years ago, and you had them at the Mother House. Keep Rosa, let Rosa stay. Rosa was in sanctuary here. This is a picture of Sarah Roberts, who is a wonderful woman. She's a church elder and has been there for a long time, very active in the sanctuary movement. And she's a public health nurse, retired, and she goes down to Arivaca as well as works there in the city and is connected with all sorts of groups. Southside was the origin of the sanctuary movement back in the 80s. John Fife was the pastor there, many other very prominent activist leaders. And they also founded No More Deaths at this time after the death of a young girl. And they said, we have to do something. So they not only organized their own parish or church congregation, but they have been very successful in getting all the faith communities there in Tucson to work together in the sanctuary movement, which is now again active. When we visited 2 different times, we were able to visit and meet Rosa Loreto. We gave her a Loreto t-shirt. She was very generous with her time, let us ask her all sorts of questions, told us how difficult it was to be there, knowing that her husband and 2 sons were right there in the same city, but she couldn't be with them. Sometimes people would bring food to the church. She would make a casserole for them. The husband would come and pick up the casserole so the kids could have a home-cooked meal by mom.
How long
So-
was she there?
She was there for 421 days, over a year, and finally, through the persistence of this community, they had those signs all throughout Tucson. And the mayor even commented, and he said, thank God Rosa isn't running for office, because I wouldn't stand a chance. But they had a vigil every night. They had people there with her in the compound 24/7, so that she wouldn't be alone. They had a little room set up so that the volunteer could be there. There was a couch and a telephone, whatever was needed. So it was a great experience to meet these people and just experience that kind of faithfulness and that persistence. One of the attorneys has been very active there, and she was able, through all the phone calls and letters, it was like over 10,000 calls were made on Rosa's behalf, and she was able to get them to make some kind of a secret deal where Rosa got to stay, because she has told the group, even the No More Deaths people, you can torture me, but I will never reveal the provisions of this deal, because Rosa hardly had a chance at all of getting any kind of stay. She had her children in Mexico, so her children are not U.S. citizens, and so it's highly unlikely that she would have been able to, survive this on her own without the people there at Presbyterian. They also have many other ministries. A clothes closet is a place, the parking lot where the day laborers can wait, and they just continue to organize and get support for people, whatever they're needed. And I'm sure they're swinging into action today with the raid at the camp.
Okay, so this is a physical border, and you've seen, okay, this is the wrong notes. You've seen pictures. It's obviously been in the news a lot. And so here's some data. The border wall is expensive. And we know research has proven that it doesn't stem the tide of drugs coming into the country. The drugs are coming in vehicles and in commercial units, and these folks are not bringing drugs in. Right now, there are more than 21,000 Border Patrol Border Patrol agents, not counting all the employees within the administration of Border Patrol. In 2017, it cost, the statistics came out in 2017. Right now it costs $274 million a year to maintain the wall, not to build anything new. Right now we have 650, keep going, that's just a couple, 650 miles of border fence of varying degrees, plus all the surveillance tools and drones and cameras, and there's sensor drones out there. As we crossed, if they were to build the rest of the 1,250 miles of the border, as some folks have suggested, it's speculated it costs more than $21 billion. So this is the new entry point where we go in down there in Nogales. There are a couple places. This is the one that we cross. And that building with the footprints on it, it's a very large building and it's decorated that way all around, and the footprints are just going in circles. And now maybe I get offended easily, but in my mind, it's in very poor taste. As you see, when we know that migrants have been lost in the desert. And this is how we walk in. We park at we talk somebody into watching the van, and then we park, and so it's new and very nice. You can see where trucks drive in. This is where we parked and walked in. And this is the real reality of the border, is that it's separating families, it's separating people that should be together, it's separating people that love each other.
So once we've crossed the border, we get to the El Comedor. It's a project of the Kino Border Initiative, and that's an international humanitarian aid organization that operates on both sides of the border. They have legal status in Mexico, and they have legal status in the U.S. And they run El Comedor, which in English that means the dining room. And it literally is a dining room on the Nogales side of the border. We walk there. And that's our first stop. And this dining room, there you see it, it's basically a room that is carved into the, whatever that small hill is. It's basically like a cave that they have carved into it and then put up fencing, and they cover the fencing with tarp. So the room is surrounded, the walls are tarp. And you'll see it's quite beautiful. You see the line there of the men, primarily men, who are waiting for El Comedor to open. And El Comedor provides support. It provides a warm meal. It's kind of the first stop for people who have been deported. Sometimes they were deported that morning. It could be that they were deported the day before. But they go there for a warm meal, for a welcome, for also for support. Some of them, as I mentioned earlier, all of their money confiscation, all of their possessions are confiscated, and they arrive with the clothes on their back. So here they can get new clothes that they have there. Well, maybe not new, but donated, new for them. New shoes, maybe a backpack. And what they do is, the Lorettos help with the setup of the meal. We're volunteers there. There are very strict instructions about what you can and cannot do. And so they have the meal, and while they're having the meal, they have this uplifting talk by one of the sisters, Hermana Gloria, who is one of the coordinators. And she makes them laugh because obviously they're coming stressed from having been deported, not knowing where their family members are, not knowing what to do. Some of them, with no ID, they can't even get a job if they wanted to in Mexico until they fix that. So Hermana Gloria gives them a pep talk. And then one of the officers of representatives from the Kino Border Initiative, Joanna, I think you have a picture of her, Joanna Williams, will give them a talk about know your rights. These are your rights, this is what you can do, and these are the services that are provided here. And one of the services provided by No More Deaths is a check cashing service. The government, the U.S. government does pay them for what they confiscated, but they give them a check. If they don't have an ID or they don't have a bank or anything, that check is basically worthless. So No More Deaths cashes their checks there. And also they have a representative from the Mexican consulate who will help them with any legal paperwork for obtaining an ID. And the Loretto's, part of their work here is after we serve them, and we serve them a really nice warm meal with tortillas and chile and a fresh drink, we sit down and we talk to them. They want us to talk to these folks to get information. For example, I sat down with one young man. He was 23 years old, and he says, I was in the U.S. for 10 years. He says, I left Mexico when I was 13. He goes, I never even had an ID here, so I don't know what to do. My wife is stuck in Tucson with our kids, and I can't even contact her because, then they might find her. So I think I'm just going to stay in Nogales on the Mexico side and start working and try to see how we can be in touch. He goes, but I can't work because I don't have an ID. So I told Joanna, the representative from, there's Joanna in the red, from the Kino Border Initiative, and then she told the Mexican Council, and we got it in line to process that request. So Loretto also brings donations of clothing, socks, shirts, pants, blouses, and funds, money. That's arranged ahead of time so that when we arrive, we're able to bring those, and we have to carry that across the border. And Mike was there, so he had the big backpack, but we all brought something and we carry it across. They also receive minor medical attention, and this here on the left is the medical cabinet, medicines that are issued there. They do have a nurse practitioner who's there sometimes. Here we are folding clothes to put in the closet, and I think that's Rox there, right, Mike? Pearl, and then over there, Mary, and Jane, myself. Anyways, we were all there in April, and that's like the first stop when we crossed the border. Oh, so let me keep going. So the next stop is the second project that the Kino Border Initiative runs, which is the Casa Nazaret, and it's, you see, Albergue para la Mujer Migrante. Albergue means shelter, so it's a women's shelter, women and children's shelter. And it's a special place separate from El Comedor. The place is not advertised for the safety of the women. And because women and children they're in a different situation. They can have, different vulnerabilities. So this house, it's on the 4th floor. It's a 4th floor walk-up, as we say in New York. 4th floor walk-up. And we're taken there and we spend time with the women. They don't really allow photos. Well, we have to ask. But they tell us about their situation. And they're able to stay there for 7 days. In certain special circumstances, they can extend that. But they're out there to get in touch with their family and reflect on what's happened. And while they're doing that, sometimes they also make these manualidades, these bracelets, necklaces, earrings to sell so that they can make a little money to help with their costs, whatever their situation is. In one instance, we met Doña Juana. I asked permission to take a photo with her. Doña Juana there came to the border with her 2 grandchildren. Their mother had died. We don't really know how, but the father was stuck in the U.S. I mean, he was in the U.S. He wanted, I say stuck because he wanted to come and get the children. The children were taken over by a coyote into the U.S. But he could not approach the children. If not, he would be arrested. The children had been born in the U.S. So then they were put into foster care and lost in the system. Now, Doña Juana was too elderly and perhaps didn't have the funds to cross. So she got stuck at the border, and she had been staying there at the albergue trying to raise some money to get back home because she needed to get back to Guatemala. So she didn't have the manual dexterity to make those bracelets. So what she did was she loved to color. So she colored these mandalas, and that's what she sold. So I purchased some of those mandalas for about $10 a page to help her get money to get a ticket to go back to Guatemala. And Loretto also brought a check. So I think we were able to finance, if not all, most of that trip back home. And I think that's it.
On the Nogales side, Nogales-Sonora border, there is a camp, or a HEPAC, Home of Hope and Peace. That's what HEPAC initials mean in Spanish. And this is a small compound up on a hill in one of the poorest colonias in Sonora. And it was formed a few years ago to help the families who lived in the dump, the city dump. And the buildings you see here are what has developed. Education for their GED. They have all kinds of classes for the people of the colonia. Over there, the green building is where volunteers from colleges come and work in HEPAC with the children. The children come every morning. In Mexico, they have 2 shifts of kids. And in the morning, they come and volunteers prepare breakfast. And it's kind of a breakfast lunch. And then the kids go to school. And then after school, they come and are able to be there. But the second shift gets lunch. And the picture there you can see is where the dump used to be. And so HEPAC started teaching the women, and their goal is that paradise is not El Norte. paradise. We want you to be able to sustain yourself here so you don't have to cross the border. And in Nogales, there are 125 maquiladores. They're from the U.S., factories that we have set up. This was made by the women of the dump, and this is shade, a shade area. It's very hot there. And these are just bottles, like that they found in the dump, plastic bottles, and they put a wire through it to form this shade. Over there is part of the lunchroom, and the women there are taught better ways to cook, and with this they have a garden that they have put compost and fixed the soil, and that's where all the seeds that you all have been bringing, because money is very, very short, so they save their seeds and plant them again. And we asked them, what do you need? This time in April, and the women were all working in the garden, and they said, well, we could use seeds if you have any. And a couple years ago, the women were making arts and crafts, and so we asked again, what do you need? And they had this dream of making more money for the HEPAC than just arts and crafts. And they wanted to learn how to sew. Talk about Pakistan. That's what's happening here. Loretto helped them get 3 sewing machines, and then other Unitarian Universalists got them 2 machines. So to begin with, they had 5 sewing machines. And now women are there every afternoon. They make First Communion dresses, quinceanera dresses. They make the shirts that the kids wear to school, and then they can pass them out. This year when we went, we took suitcases full of art supplies. You know, stuff we have in our closets, like markers and paper. They don't have it, but it's for the summer school that they have for the kids, the art supplies. And we've taken backpacks and school supplies, and the kids can't go to school unless they have shoes. So, okay, any other pictures? Okay, at the ball. Got it.
Okay. On the 4-mile walk or ride to APOC, it's only 4 miles from the richest country in the world to a place that is supported by what they can pick at the dump. So on this 4 miles, there's a small little shrine dedicated to Jose Antonio Rodriguez. I think you've got a slide of that, yeah. It's just a very simple shrine right there on the street, right next to a little tiny building where Jose was shot and killed, murdered by a border agent. It's been 3.5 years ago. And Jose, 16 years old, out walking in the early hours of the morning and hoping to meet up with his brother who was working at a fast food restaurant, getting off duty. And there was some scuffling going on, and the border agent up high on this wall, which is over 20 feet, the border agent saw Jose, young boy, right there, one of those next to that white building, walking in his own neighborhood, and shot him 10 times, killed him, of course. And in his defense, he said, well, Jose was throwing rocks at him. So you can see trying to throw a rock up 20 feet in this very narrow little canyon-like space, it just, was not hardly a danger to the Border Patrol agent. But many of those agents are young, they're fearful, they're not trained properly. So he killed this young boy. And to this day, the family still has not received justice. The agent, his name is Lonnie Schwartz. You feel sorry for him. I'm sure he wasn't trained properly. He will now stand trial, which is a first, and that trial will be in November. We were there one of the years instead of having Operation Streamline, they were arraigning him, and so there was a huge demonstration out in front of the courthouse at that point. But children the world over throw rocks at these walls. In Palestine, here, it's just a thing to do. You throw a rock, but you're certainly not going to be able to injure someone that's 20 feet up above you. His family, after this incident, was at first bought off by the government. There's a video of this that has not yet been released. The family, was in fear and in such grief that they were bought off and asked or told they had to keep silent about everything. But one of the women, Jeanette Paz, at that time she was the executive director of APOC, just persisted and would not let go and kept organizing people and kept going and finally they were able now to bring this agent to trial. So hopefully, even though it won't be a real, incident to bring back their son, but at least they will have some justice when he is brought to trial. These are, just artwork along the wall to take away some of the harshness of it.
The Mexican side.
There's one where they've stenciled picture candles. You see the candles going down the wall. And that's, there's the folks that live on the other side. You can see their little homes right there.
Okay, you should speak to that.
Every year we go, they change the entrance to getting into the place, and we never know which way to go. So obviously we're lost here and trying to find our way.
It was our own border crossing experience.
We got
Jumping the fence.
and then not everybody could jump very easily. And there's cars coming all around there as we walk across with our green Loretto shirts, and then we have to jump the fence and help everybody across. Okay. And this is part of the group that went in April. And making connections. How do you help? Okay, you say to yourself, okay, I can't go. Well, what happens? People that go back home, talk about the border experience. And this is one example of what has happened. Paulette Peterson went on a border trip 2.5 years ago. In New York, she was talking at with a friend, Kathy Clarkson, in the red shirt there. Kathy Clarkson is from the Basilica of St. Mary's in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Kathy came on a trip with us, and she went home and has organized that basilica. They have, so far, to this date, 31 people from the basilica, lawyers, all kinds of different people. The church leaders have all been on the trip. And there is another organized trip with the Minneapolis people in November. They took the Rosa signs, they were part of that campaign. Now they are working with refugees. They had a committee, but the committee wasn't active. And we did PowerPoints so that she could show them. And it just shows how we as Loretto spread the word. It just goes out. She invited us to come and speak as the mission speaker, and that's what Sister Mary Margaret and I did in January. Eileen Harrington did it for us, and they took up a collection. And last June, for the Villa Maria in El Paso and Annunciation House, received $5,000. And the money that the Basilica collected for the border experience is $15,000. We're not sure yet. I don't think the money has come yet, but that will be divided, for immigration. So this was this our last trip?
It's outside, we're outside.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, Sarah.
Okay, thank you all. Any questions? It's time for our break, but if you have any questions at all. Okay.
Yes. There's all this information circulating, repeating, where people say, oh, the migration is down to practically 0%. And I just wondered if you could comment on the numbers of Sonoran.
Come, Caroline.
Can you hear me from here?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like a video.
Oh, sorry. I don't have any numbers or statistics, but many people think because the current president is so tough on immigration that has caused this drop in people crossing. That may have, some impact, but one of the real reasons is that the United States, our government, with your tax money, is outsourcing its dirty work. We are now paying the Mexican government to stop people from coming into Mexico, people from Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. Instead of coming through Mexico and then into the United States, many of those people are being stopped in very harsh ways because they are being paid by the U.S. government to stop it. We don't want this at our front door or our back door. We don't want these people in great numbers, and children and women coming into this country.
Okay, another thing, just in April, when we were there, the people being deported, El Comedor was full. And that's 250 in a day. Right, Operation Streamline, the numbers were down from 70, but when people do not have food to put on their table, we met a young 19-year-old. Why did he come? He has a mom and 7 brothers and sisters, and he was determined to make it so he could make some money, so they would not starve and his little brothers and sisters could go to school. So there's a lot of propaganda. And that's why we have had 3 workshops. The one that features the people right now who are in seeking asylum or in the detention centers. Maureen here works with the people, with the undocumented in Denver. Every city where we are, there are undocumented people scared, living in, being afraid of getting deported. And you just think of, okay, numbers are down. Well, when you have the, like what happened at the camp, that's a medical facility. And they go in with their big guns and boots. So maybe there's more fear, you know. Any other questions?
I just wanted to say, Alicia Ramirez, when we went the first
Can you
time.
come over here, Maureen?
Sure. And Carolyn, you can fill this in better than I can, and you're probably responsible.
Hold the mic down.
But when we first went to El Comedor, not El Comedor, there's another building called Grupo Beta,
Yeah.
and that's where they repatriate. The first time we went there, we were washing feet with cold water in tubs.
Yeah.
And every time, the next time I went, the woman there said, no mas, no more cold water. She let us get warm water. Well, I think because of the Lorettos, they now have a medical clinic there.
They do.
So, you know, you come a long way when you're a Loretto.
Yeah.
Well, another thing is that a lot of Loretto nurses came. I mean, anybody, we got nurses and all kinds of supplies to go there. Okay, any other questions? It's your break, so, and we're around, so you can ask us.
So when's the next trip and what are the things most needed in addition to seeds?
As always, what's needed most is money. I think that is crucial.
You might mention that we raise money and then donate at each spot as we go.
Every spot we go to, we bring money. And so money, it's crucial for that. It's like with no more deaths. We could, talking with the director, Jim Marks, I remember him saying in December, the Methodist Church had given him $2,000. And that's what we carried on our backs on the migrant trail. But he said, we have got outlets that we can get a lot more for our bucks than you bringing us blankets. You know, that's one thing. But we always take, we've taken, well, we concentrated on the summer camp at Haypak this last time with art supplies and little bags. For the migrants, we do all kinds of toiletries and socks and, go ahead, Carolyn. Jeans.
When we recruit people to go on the trip, that's one of the things we ask them to do, is to talk with their parish, their book club, whoever will listen to them. And we send them a little information about these places in hopes then that they can raise some funds and bring some money, whether it's, you know, $25, $10, whatever. So, and then we try to divide it up to the various places that we visit. But we want the people going on the trip to do that in preparation, to read it and know a little bit about where we're going and to be helpful in getting some funds.
And when you go back from being at the border, you thank those people and, you know, with pictures or some kind of program.
Took a little bracelets from the women's shelter.
Yeah.
Take them.
If someone just wanted to make a donation, where would they send it?
Well, gladly.
Sisters of Loretto, and you can put on it border trip
Carolyn.
or whatever. But if, you know, that's what people have done. you know? And like, when we organize a border trip, and to answer your question, we don't have a date right now for one. We have one, but I think it's already full, November 18th. So I'm sorry about that.
We can only take 10. That's all they,
10 at a time.
in the place.
Yeah. Okay, thank you all very much.
Are you interested? Yeah. Great. Thank you.
Yes.
All right, my second stand here.
They take their shoes to. That would have been about
Is that gonna work?
Yeah, then they're there and they.
Just want to cover your face. What's that?
Probably about 3.
Okay, thank you.
Just don't look at the light.
I was in process for
Great job, folks. I got some, oh no,
not
not
everyone
everyone
has their own.
Bugs on it.
I had this thing where I wanted it to be
Yeah, and well,
when I did it.
and you can tell what we have done.
You know, in my world, it would be to
most
most
trips.
So I really felt like I went to
So last time we paid,
you know, something maybe it's just a matter of
we needed.
I wanted it to really, I did it for it to really, you know,
We sponsor people from the camps. And usually, Minnesota people,
but you've been in process for a little bit.
they pay their own rates, but there's not a price. We usually give out meals, we rent the van out of our LACC. And it's
Just tell me about you.
we pay
More about spiritual community or
So everybody's,
Would you?
everybody's different.
Oh, how old is he?
So don't, so
Oh,
there's
that
no,
would be, you know, that's right.
We've wanted to do something like this. We have to carry out an airplane.
Way
It's in
more.
there.
Some people,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's,
He's a really, he's a, you know, he's a.
this is so nice.
mission work,
He's a personal trainer
this
in
is,
New York City, so
you
he's
know,
a really
in their
good
lives, like they
Oh, that
spend
is
their lives.
because that's how I said.
Yeah.
Yeah, or
Found
even
Rhino
to
and
make
it's
trips, because this time.
You know,
I
I was different. I was
Carrying it in the
more,
desert.
And we have been doing that.
I worked,
Last lot trips.
you know,
No, we have to.
in the hospital, I worked for a company.
Yeah, and then getting it down on the airplane.
And then Loretta was something I read so much, you know, and it matched.
She's upstairs doing a workshop.
So mine wasn't, I didn't
Because
have
it's
a lot
on
of,
the east
I
side.
did this or I did that.
This
Mine was more
That would be your best.
spiritual.
Okay.
A lot of
And so we'll divide
San Antonio.
So
not
some
in depth,
people-
but just touching on.
Yeah, because the
But
van
I'll
goes
ask her
there.
and I'll ask Mary, I'll love it. She's in
And
San Antonio, maybe she's got some
we
connection.
Oh,
Houston.
so for you, would
She's
you,
in the, yeah, okay, that's super.
what you found was, you know,
It is heartbreaking.
kind of
Well,
I know there,
things
every
are
day,
things
so
that
we
were
just can't pay, but.
you're happier and,
So,
put together.
well,
Yeah,
You know that,
see, we
tell
have
them you
Every college, you know, sit down, you know, crush them.
Yeah, well, I'll keep my eye out.
Okay.
How about that?
She's 4 months pregnant, 5 months pregnant. She speaks some Spanish, but her husband doesn't speak Spanish because he's
Honduras 2 years ago.
They have been picked up and
So
separated.
I would say
She was
when they're
there, she
reading,
didn't know where he was,
they
whether
would
these
love to
databases
know.
were you supposed to be able to locate people. They couldn't, so they're helping there at the
You know,
shelter, they're trying to help
and
us to
I'm
find
not
it.
Catholic.
They can't find it, but somebody, he's,
Mine was
you know,
religious,
his phone
you
call.
know, so.
And so it's called her, so they've been talking to her, they didn't know where I was.
Because,
You know, and they're just
How
kids.
your heart got you, that's how
We just
many
can't.
what I would say.
And people, no
But
resources.
if you are more
And
of
my
a,
back,
The one story from that
feels more right to keep it where it is, then that's okay too. You know?
In a way, I did it thinking, this is a good thing coming out of it.
Yeah, and it brings us stuff.
And then,
And when we were sitting there and she started
Just as early as
and she said, okay, she was gonna.
Yeah.
but I thought it would be a good thing.
It's your heart knows why they came on that retreat, why it's done the work with the sisters, or maybe it's you.
I went.
That's exactly.
You know what I mean? And if you can hold it down, she makes it really interesting.
And we had a peace committee meeting, we just,
so there's that one particular setting that
I
she's
told them all. And then,
It's usually tears.
Yeah.
And that's how it started.
Kathy and all, they all helped me.
Again, where they exchange glances, yeah, I just gave myself goosebumps. Can I help with anything? Is this your example?
We'll
find great job.
Yes, I know,
Hurry and love it. Involved again. I'd rather go again. If we did entertainment, we entertained ourselves.
Might include kind of
Okay.
what you want. You know, why you just asking if it's still on or what? Is it still on?
You're in the directory.
I don't know.